A young boy from a small village in Millbrook, New York vanished during basketball tryouts, leaving his family shattered and a community haunted by unanswered questions. But 4 months later, his father, who also serves as the assistant coach, opens the team captain's locker, and what he finds inside stops him cold. The evening before tryouts, the house was alive with quiet anticipation. Jason bounced from room to room, the kind of restless energy that only a 10-year-old with a big dream could muster. A worn basketball sat in the corner of the living room, scuffed and patched from countless hours spent in the driveway. He grabbed it, dribbling with quick taps against the hardwood floor, the rhythmic sound echoing softly through the house. "Easy there, champ," Mark called from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He watched Jason with a mix of amusement and pride. His son's determination was unmistakable, but Mark also recognized the boy's tender heart. So eager to please, so eager to belong. Jason caught his father's eyes and grinned, the gap in his front teeth flashing. "I'm gonna make the team tomorrow, Dad. I'm gonna be the best." Mark smiled but didn't reply right away. Instead, he walked over, ruffled Jason's messy hair, and knelt down to his level. "You don't have to be the best to be proud of yourself, Jason. Just play your game. That's all anyone can ask." Jason nodded solemnly, but the fire in his eyes didn't dim. "I'm gonna make you proud, Dad. I promise." Mark's heart clenched. "You already do." Later that night, Jason lay in bed, the soft hum of the ceiling fan blending with the distant sounds of the neighborhood, settling into sleep. His thoughts weren't on monsters or fears. They were on basketball courts, on soaring for the perfect shot, on the roar of the crowd. He imagined himself dribbling past defenders, the ball spinning on his finger before he launched it toward the hoop. The swish of the net, the cheers. It all felt so real. In the morning, breakfast was a lively affair. Jason's mother, Laura, served pancakes with a playful flourish, while Mark chatted with Jason about the day ahead. There was laughter, light teasing about nerves, and gentle reminders to stay focused but have fun. School was a blur that day, but Jason's mind wandered back to the gym. At recess, he dribbled a worn ball on the cracked asphalt, watched by friends who shared his excitement. He was part of a small group, the underdogs, the hopefuls. His best friend, Malik, nudged him and whispered, "You got this, man. We all do." But beneath the surface, a quieter story played out. Jason had always been a little different. Not in the way that stood out loudly, but in subtle ways. Teachers noted his sensitivity, how he sometimes kept to himself. At home, Mark and Laura did their best to shield him from the tougher edges of childhood. The loss of Jason's older brother a few years prior had left a void, and Jason often felt the weight of unspoken expectations. Basketball had become his sanctuary, a place where he could channel his hopes, where the past didn't feel so heavy. Mark often stayed late after work, sitting on the sidelines, watching Jason practice shots over and over, willing him forward with silent encouragement. One afternoon, as the two walked home from the court, Jason stopped, clutching the ball close. "Dad, do you think I'll ever be good enough?" Mark looked down, eyes softening. "You're already good enough, Jason. It's not about being the best. It's about loving the game and giving it your all. Everything else will follow." Jason smiled but held the ball tighter, as if trying to hold on to that hope. As the days led up to tryouts, Jason's excitement grew, but so did his nervousness. Late-night conversations with Mark became moments of reassurance. "Just be yourself," Mark would say, "and remember, I'm proud no matter what." Jason's world was small but full, filled with dreams, family love, and the endless possibility that tomorrow could change everything. But that crisp fall afternoon, beneath the bright gym lights and the clatter of sneakers, everything shifted. The laughter faded, replaced by a silence so heavy it seemed to press against every heart in the room. None of them, least of all Mark and Jason, could have known that the day Jason disappeared would mark the beginning of a mystery that would unravel their lives in ways they never imagined. The gym was alive with the steady rhythm of bouncing balls, sneakers squeaking against polished wood, and the murmur of conversations blending with the occasional whistle. Parents clustered in groups near the bleachers, exchanging the usual small talk about school, about the upcoming season, about who might make the team this year. The boys moved in quick bursts of energy across the court, faces flushed with effort and anticipation. Mark lingered near the sideline, eyes scanning the players with the sharp attention only a parent could summon. Jason was somewhere out there, weaving through the drills, chasing the ball with a fierce focus that made Mark's chest swell with pride. But then, an unsettling feeling crept over him, one that had no name but tightened like a vice. He glanced again, his heart skipping. Jason wasn't where he was supposed to be. "Jason!" Mark called out, voice steady but carrying an edge. He moved toward the center of the gym, weaving between players and coaches, but no sign of his son met his eyes. "Have you seen Jason?" he asked Coach Daniels, who was shouting instructions to a group at the far end.
No, Daniels replied, frowning.
"He was just here a moment ago." Panic began to ripple beneath Mark's skin. His eyes darted toward the locker rooms, then the sidelines. He scanned the crowd of parents, but no one else seemed to notice Jason's absence yet. The gym's usual noise felt muffled, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Mark's voice grew louder, more urgent. "Jason, where are you?" A few heads turned. "Who?" a woman asked, stepping forward. "Jason Thompson?" "Yes," Mark said, voice breaking slightly. The room's energy shifted suddenly. Parents stopped chatting, their faces tightening. A few children paused mid-drill, sensing the tension. "Maybe he's just in the bathroom?" one parent suggested. Mark hurried toward the hallway leading to the locker rooms, his steps quick, almost desperate. He reached the bathroom door, but it was empty. No sounds inside, no sign of anyone. He checked the nearby storage rooms, the small office, the concession area. Nothing. "Has anyone seen him?" Mark's questions spread like wildfire. Coach Daniels gathered the other adults. "We need to check outside, around the building." Mark nodded, grabbing his phone with shaking hands. He dialed Laura's number. "Have you seen Jason?" he asked as soon as she picked up. "No, Mark. I'm at work." Laura's voice trembled. "Where is he?" "I don't know. He was just here. Now he's gone." Outside, the crisp fall air hit Mark like a slap. The playground beyond the gym was empty, shadows lengthening as the afternoon sun dipped lower. The street was quiet. No sign of Jason's small frame. More parents joined the search, calling out his name into the gathering dusk. Inside, the gym doors swung open and closed as neighbors and friends poured in, their faces etched with concern. Someone reached the police. Mark felt the world tilt beneath him, the panic rising like a storm breaking free. Questions battered his mind in a relentless storm. How could Jason disappear so quickly? Where could he have gone? Why hadn't anyone noticed sooner? The police arrived swiftly. Officers combed the gym and its surroundings with methodical efficiency. But as night deepened, the search widened, stretching into the nearby woods, the streets, the neighboring houses. Mark stood in the cold, breath visible in the air, hands trembling as he spoke to the officers. He's just a kid, 10 years old. He couldn't just leave. The days that followed stretched endlessly, a bleak landscape of hope and despair tangled together. Flyers went up on every lamppost and storefront. Jason's bright face smiling from glossy paper, eyes full of life, a plea for anyone to come forward. Mark and Laura kept vigil at the police station and the search command center, faces pale, voices raw. They spoke with detectives, answered questions, relived the moments before Jason vanished, searching desperately for any missed clue. Rumors spiraled through the town. Had Jason run away? Had something worse happened? Some whispered about a stranger lurking near the gym, others about a prank gone wrong. But no one had answers. Mark's nights became restless. Every creak in the house, every shadow in the dark, sent his heart racing. He clutched a worn basketball that Jason had left on his nightstand, the seams soft from endless dribbling. "Come home, son," he whispered into the silence. Weeks passed. Search parties grew weary. Leads dried up. Every hopeful call ended in disappointment. The town's collective breath held tight, waiting for a sign. Mark's heart ached with every unanswered question, every sleepless night. And still, Jason remained lost. his absence a hollow echo that filled every corner of their lives. What had happened that day? Where was Jason? The answers were out there. But for now, the search was a desperate plea for hope in a growing sea of silence. Mark sat across from Detective Ramirez in the cramped, sterile office, the dull hum of the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The detective's eyes were steady but tired, the kind of weariness that only months of chasing shadows could carve into a person's face. Mark's hands clenched into fists on the table, knuckles pale beneath the harsh light. How could this happen? Mark's voice cracked, the frustration bleeding through the edges of his carefully controlled tone. He was just a kid, 10 years old. How does a child disappear without a trace? Detective Ramirez leaned forward slightly, clasping his hands together. We're doing everything we can, Mark. We've checked cameras, interviewed everyone who was at the gym, canvassed the neighborhood. But right now, we don't have any solid leads. Mark swallowed hard, the weight of helplessness settling heavily on his shoulders. But there has to be something. Anything. He wouldn't just vanish into thin air. We all want answers, Ramirez said quietly. But sometimes, the truth takes time. The office door creaked open, and another officer stepped in, handing Ramirez a fresh folder. He flipped through it, eyes scanning quickly before meeting Mark's again. There's been a sighting, he said, voice low. About 2 towns over. Someone reported seeing a boy matching Jason's description. Mark's heart leapt, hope igniting like a fragile flame. Where? In the town of Cedar Creek, about 15 miles from here, Ramirez replied. The witness says the boy was with an older man near a convenience store. The description isn't perfect, but it's close enough to warrant a follow-up. Mark felt the familiar rush of adrenaline and fear swirl in his gut. The possibility that his son was alive, somewhere out there, held tight against the darkness of the unknown. Outside, the town buzzed with whispers and rumors that slid through conversations like uneasy shadows. At the grocery store, a woman clutched the missing poster tighter, eyes darting nervously. At the diner, quiet debates murmured over chipped coffee cups. Maybe he ran away, someone suggested in the pharmacy line, voice barely above a whisper. Why would a kid run away in the middle of tryouts? Another replied skeptically. Maybe he didn't want to make the team, a third voice speculated. Mark heard these whispers on his drives through town, felt them in the cautious glances of neighbors and acquaintances. Some offered support, but many kept their distance, afraid to be caught in the ripples of a tragedy too big for a small community. Back at the police station, Mark sat through endless interviews, reviewing photos, recounting every detail from that day. Each conversation peeled back layers of confusion and fear, leaving raw wounds exposed. At home, Laura tried to keep the household steady, but the strain showed in her tired eyes and forced smiles. The silence between them grew heavy, filled with unspoken fears and unanswered questions. Mark lay awake some nights, staring at the ceiling, replaying moments from the past. Jason's laugh, the way his small hand fit into his own, the proud smile after a good game. The memories became a lifeline and a torment all at once. Weeks blurred into months. The investigation pressed on with the slow grind of bureaucracy and dead ends. Officers followed up on the Cedar Creek sighting, but nothing concrete emerged. The boy seen near the convenience store was never positively identified. Mark's frustration deepened, but so did his determination. He refused to let the trail go cold. One afternoon, as he sifted through photos in the police evidence room, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Check Ryan's locker. You'll find answers. Mark's breath caught. Ryan, the team captain. The boy who'd been so close to Jason, whose smile seemed just a little too practiced, whose eyes avoided questions. His fingers trembled as he stared at the message, the knot in his stomach tightening. Could it be a clue or a cruel prank? Questions flooded his mind. Who sent the message? What was hidden behind that locker door? And most importantly, could this be the break he had been praying for? Ryan Cole was the kind of kid who drew attention without even trying. His easy grin, confident stride, and the effortless way he commanded the basketball court made him the natural leader. He was the team captain, the boy everyone looked up to, the one parents whispered about with pride during post-game chats. He had the talent, the charm, and the drive, the full package. Mark watched him from the sidelines more times than he cared to admit. Ryan had a way of making the game seem like second nature, like he was born to be there, to lead. Yet, whenever Mark's eyes met Ryan's, he sometimes caught a flicker, something just beneath the surface. A tension in his jaw, a shadow in his gaze, quickly masked by a flash of that trademark smile. Ryan and Jason had a complicated history. They were friends in the way kids could be. Sometimes teammates, sometimes rivals, sometimes competitors in a quiet battle for attention and respect. Jason admired Ryan's skill but knew the weight of that role pressed heavily on his shoulders. Ryan often took the lead during drills, barking orders with a maturity beyond his years, and sometimes, just sometimes, Jason felt pushed to the sidelines. After Jason disappeared, Ryan's behavior shifted. At first, he was the model of concern, holding back tears during team meetings, offering quiet words to worried teammates. But as days slipped into weeks, Mark noticed a change. Ryan grew distant, his smiles more forced, his eyes flickering away when Jason's name was mentioned. Practice one afternoon, Mark pulled Ryan aside. The gym buzzed faintly around them as the other boys practiced free throws. "Ryan, you all right?" Mark asked, voice low but steady. Ryan hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, it's been tough. Jason was your teammate, your friend." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Yeah, I know. Anything you want to tell me?" Ryan looked away, hands balling into fists.
No.
"Nothing." Mark pressed gently. "If you need to talk, anything at all, you know where to find me." Ryan's lips twitched into a half-smile. "Thanks, coach." But as Ryan walked away, Mark's gut churned. That smile didn't reach his eyes. Later, Mark caught whispers among the team. Glances exchanged in hallways, hushed conversations that stopped when he approached. Ryan seemed to hold a private world behind his confident exterior, one Mark couldn't quite access. At home, Mark replayed every interaction with Ryan. Why was the boy so guarded? What was he hiding? One night, he found himself pacing the living room, phone in hand, debating whether to call Ryan's parents. He wondered if the team captain was carrying secrets heavier than anyone suspected. The more Mark thought, the clearer it became that Ryan's story was tangled with Jason's disappearance in ways no one had yet unraveled. The question burned sharper with each passing day. What was Ryan really hiding? For months had passed since Jason's disappearance, and the autumn leaves had come and gone twice, their colors fading with each chilly breeze. Mark found himself back in the gym, the familiar smell of sweat, polished wood, and worn sneakers filling the air. But something had shifted. The place felt hollow, the echoes of bouncing balls and chatter hollowed out by absence. The boys moved sluggishly through drills, their energy dimmed, as if the weight of Jason's absence pressed down on them all. They fumbled passes that once seemed effortless, their eyes occasionally flicking toward Mark, searching for guidance, reassurance, or maybe just someone to blame. Mark stood on the sidelines, clipboard in hand, but his focus was fractured. He watched Ryan bark instructions, but even the team captain's usual confidence seemed brittle. The tension between the boys was palpable, unspoken questions hanging in the air like a thick fog. At one point, a missed shot from a normally steady player drew a sharp sigh from Mark. He stepped onto the court, voice firm but gentle. "Let's reset. Focus. Remember why you're here." The boys nodded, trying to shake off the lingering unease, but it clung stubbornly, like a shadow no amount of light could chase away. After practice, Mark lingered in the locker room, the chatter replaced by a heavy silence. Ryan sat alone on a bench, staring at the floor. Mark hesitated before sitting beside him. "This isn't easy, I know," Mark said quietly. "We're all trying to find our footing." Ryan's jaw tightened. "It's not the same without him." "No," Mark agreed. "But we have to keep going. For Jason." Ryan nodded, eyes distant. "I just wish things were different." Later, Mark found himself alone in the gym, shooting baskets in the fading light. Each swish of the net was a reminder of the boy who should have been there, laughing, chasing dreams. The town moved on. New seasons began. But Mark's heart remained caught in the past, tethered to the memory of a son lost too soon. Then, on an otherwise ordinary afternoon, the calm shattered. A call from the police came through, a lead. Something new. Something real. Mark's hands trembled as he answered, the fragile hope igniting anew. Everything was about to change. Mark lingered near the lockers after practice, the familiar clatter of sneakers and slamming metal doors slowly fading as the boys filed out, eager to escape the weight of the evening. He had come back to grab a basketball Ryan had left behind. A simple task. One he'd done countless times before without thought. The locker stood half open, the dull fluorescent light catching the edges of the metal door. Mark's fingers brushed against the worn handle, hesitating for a moment, a strange sense of unease prickling at the back of his neck. With a deep breath, he pulled the door fully open. Inside, amidst the usual clutter of gym bags, sweat towels, and water bottles, something caught his eye. A folded piece of fabric. Mark's heart faltered as he recognized the unmistakable red and white of Jason's jersey. He reached in, hands trembling, and lifted it out carefully. The fabric was heavy with a dark stain that soaked through the fibers. It wasn't the usual dirt or sweat from practice. It was something colder, something more permanent. Mark's breath hitched as the color sunk in. Deep crimson, smeared across the chest and sleeves. The world seemed to tilt beneath him. His fingers clenched the jersey tightly, the rough texture biting into his palms. Images flooded his mind. Jason's bright smile, his boundless energy, and now this bloodied cloth, silent but screaming. A sudden noise behind him startled Mark. Ryan stood in the hallway, eyes widening at the sight of his coach holding the jersey. For a moment, neither spoke. The weight of unspoken truths hung thick between them. "Mark!" Ryan's voice was barely a whisper, laden with something unreadable. "Why is this in your locker?" Mark's voice cracked, but his demand was steady. Ryan swallowed hard, gaze dropping to the floor. I don't know how it got there." Mark's mind raced. How could a jersey belonging to his missing son end up in the locker of the team captain? Was it a cruel joke? A mistake? Or something far worse? "Ryan," Mark said, stepping closer. "This isn't just a jersey. This is Jason's. And it's stained with blood." Ryan's jaw tightened, fists clenching at his sides. "I didn't." "Then explain," Mark urged, eyes searching for any sign of truth. Ryan hesitated, then, voice trembling, began to speak. "There was an accident. It wasn't supposed to happen. I swear." Mark's chest tightened, disbelief and fear warring within him. "What accident?" Ryan looked up, eyes glassy. "During practice, Jason and I got into it. It got out of hand. He fell. I didn't mean for him to get hurt." The room felt smaller, suffocating. Mark's thoughts spiraled. Anger, sorrow, confusion. Was this the truth? Or another layer of deception? Before Mark could respond, the locker room door creaked open. Coach Daniels stepped in, eyes flicking between them, sensing the tension. "What's going on here?" Daniels asked, voice steady but concerned. Mark held up the jersey. "This belongs to Jason, and it was in Ryan's locker." Daniels' face paled. "We need to get to the bottom of this." Ryan's voice cracked. "I just want to tell the truth." Mark's heart pounded. The discovery was a fracture line, splitting the team, the town, and his world itself. How did Jason's bloody jersey end up in Ryan's locker? The question echoed relentlessly, a sinister chant haunting every thought. The locker room felt colder now, the usual hum of post-practice chatter replaced by a thick silence. Mark closed the locker door behind him with a soft but final click, the bloody jersey still clutched tightly in his hands. He turned slowly and saw Ryan standing near the benches, his back pressed against the wall, eyes fixed somewhere beyond the room as if trying to disappear. Mark's jaw tightened. The years of training as a coach, the patience he'd learned to wield, seemed to evaporate in the heat of the moment. He took a step forward, the weight of grief and anger driving him. "What is this, Ryan?" Mark's voice cut through the stillness, steady but heavy with accusation. "What do you know about Jason?" Ryan's eyes snapped toward him, wide and unblinking. For a moment, there was only the sound of their breathing, shallow and uneven. Mark took another step closer. Don't lie to me. This, he held up the bloody jersey, belongs to my son. You're the only one who can explain how it got here. Ryan swallowed hard, his confident mask fracturing, revealing a flicker of panic beneath. His fingers twitched, clenched and unclenched, but he didn't speak. Mark's heart hammered in his chest, his voice dropping to a quiet, almost desperate tone. Jason's been missing for months. Months, Ryan. Every day, every hour, I wonder if he's out there, hurt, scared. And now I find this. Why? Ryan's lips parted, his voice cracking as he finally spoke. I didn't want this to happen. Mark's fists clenched tighter. Then what happened? Ryan looked down, unable or unwilling to meet his gaze. It was an accident. We were practicing. Things got rough. I didn't mean for him to get hurt. Mark's chest tightened with a mix of disbelief and fury. Accident? Why didn't you tell me? Why hide it? Why put the jersey in your locker? Ryan's eyes flickered up, glassy and haunted. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I thought if I told anyone, it would ruin everything. The team, the season, my future. Your future. Mark's voice rose, disbelief turning to anger. What about Jason's future? What about his life? Ryan's face drained of color, the bravado crumbling completely. I panicked. I didn't want to lose everything. Mark took a shaky breath, the rage tempered by exhaustion and sorrow. You should have come to me. We could have fixed it. Ryan's voice was barely a whisper. I was afraid. Afraid you'd hate me. Mark's eyes burned. You think I hate you? No. I just want the truth. Because Jason deserves that much. Ryan nodded slowly, tears threatening to spill over. I'm sorry. I never wanted this to happen. The room seemed to close in on them, the weight of years of silence and secrets pressing down. Mark took a step back, the anger mingling with a cold realization. What else aren't you telling me? Ryan's breath hitched. There's someone else. Jake helped me cover it up. Mark's heart skipped. Jake? The other teammate. Ryan nodded, voice trembling. He was scared too. We didn't know what else to do. Mark's mind raced. This wasn't just an accident anymore. It was a tangled web of fear, lies, and betrayal. He looked at Ryan, no longer the confident captain, but a boy burdened with guilt and secrets. What do we do now? Ryan whispered. Mark's eyes darkened with resolve. We tell the truth. All of it. Ryan nodded, a fragile hope flickering. The silence was shattered by the sound of footsteps approaching. The moment was slipping away. Mark's heart pounded. Whatever came next, nothing would ever be the same. Ryan's breath came in shallow gasps, the weight of months pressing down on him like a storm cloud ready to break. His eyes flicked to the floor for a long moment, gathering courage he wasn't sure he had. Slowly, he raised his gaze, meeting Mark's steady stare. It started during practice. Ryan began, voice low and wavering. Jason and I, we were just messing around, competing like we always did. You know how it gets when two guys want to prove themselves. But that day, it was different. Mark's jaw clenched. Different how? Ryan swallowed hard. We were going at it harder than usual. The coach was pushing us, the pressure was on, and I snapped. He paused, fingers trembling slightly as he clenched his fists. Jason was in my way. I shoved him. I didn't mean to, but I did. The image came rushing back. The sharp collision, the stunned silence that followed, the way Jason's body hit the floor with a sickening thud. He hit the ground hard, Ryan said, voice cracking. I saw stars. I didn't know if he was breathing. Mark's chest tightened painfully. Why didn't you tell anyone? Ryan's eyes filled with tears. Because I was scared. If I told, everything would be over. I'd be kicked off the team. My parents would be disappointed. I didn't know what to do. What happened next? Mark pressed. Ryan swallowed, struggling to keep his composure. I panicked. I couldn't move. Jason was quiet, too quiet. I didn't know if he was hurt badly or worse. I didn't want to believe it. He looked up, eyes haunted. Jake found me. He said we had to do something. If anyone knew, it would ruin all of us. So we agreed to keep it quiet. We hid Jason. We thought if we waited long enough, it would go away. Mark felt a cold numbness creep through his veins. You hid him? How? Ryan's voice dropped to a whisper. We dragged him into the storage room near the gym. We didn't know what else to do. We left him there, hoping someone would find him. Mark's fists clenched. And the blood on the jersey? Ryan looked away, shame flooding his face. That's from when Jason tried to get out. He hurt himself on the door frame. Mark's mind reeled. The image of his son trapped, scared, and bleeding in the dark gnawed at his soul. But that's not all, Ryan added hesitantly. Mark's eyes sharpened. What else? Ryan swallowed the lump in his throat. Jake. He helped me cover it up. He was there that day. He knew what happened, and he kept quiet. Mark's breath hitched. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound. Why didn't Jake come forward? Mark asked. Ryan shrugged. Defeated. Fear. Guilt. Maybe he thought he was protecting us both. But it's tearing me apart. Mark stared at Ryan, the pieces falling into place but the pain still raw. We have to tell the police. We can't keep this buried any longer. Ryan nodded slowly, the weight of truth settling heavily on his shoulders. I'm ready. Mark's eyes narrowed. There's still one thing. Someone else. You said there's someone else involved? Ryan hesitated, glancing toward the door before leaning closer. There was another kid, David. He saw everything. He knows what we did. Mark's heart pounded. Then we need to find him. Ryan swallowed hard. David disappeared shortly after Jason did. No one knows where he is. The room spun. Another missing boy. Mark's voice was barely audible. This isn't just an accident anymore. It's something much darker. Ryan nodded, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, Mark. I never wanted any of this to happen. Mark's gaze hardened with determination. We'll find the truth, no matter what it takes. The evening shadows had deepened when Mark finally found himself sitting across from Jake Porter in a small, dimly lit room at the police station. The air was thick with tension, the weight of secrets pressing down harder with each passing second. Jake's usually cocky demeanor was gone, replaced by a nervous, guarded silence. Mark's eyes bore into him, searching for any flicker of honesty. Jake, we know you were there that day. You helped Ryan cover up what happened to Jason. I need you to tell me everything. Jake's gaze dropped to the floor, fingers fidgeting with the hem of his jacket. After a long pause, his voice cracked as he finally spoke. I didn't want to get involved. But when I saw what happened, I was scared. Scared of losing everything. Scared of what would happen if anyone found out. Mark's heart clenched, torn between anger and sympathy. So you stayed silent. You helped hide Jason. Jake nodded, shame flooding his face. I thought it was the only way. I thought if we kept it quiet, we could move on. But you didn't move on, Mark said softly. You all have been living a lie, and it's hurting more than just you. Jake swallowed hard. We were kids. We didn't know what to do. We were terrified. Mark leaned forward, voice firm. Terrified or not, you made a choice. Now you have to face it. As the confession spilled out, so did the tangled web of lies. The boys who had once been inseparable teammates were now caught in a trap of their own making. Friendships fractured under the weight of guilt, and the team's unity dissolved into suspicion and blame. Mark thought of Jason, the boy whose laughter no longer filled the gym. The boy whose dreams had been stolen in a moment of fear and panic. He felt the pull of two paths, one leading to justice, exposing the truth no matter the cost, and the other offering a chance to protect these boys, to save their futures from ruin. His mind raced. Could forgiveness coexist with accountability? Was redemption possible amid such betrayal? The room grew quiet except for Jake's uneven breathing. Mark's voice broke the silence. This isn't just about punishment. It's about making things right. But I need to know. Are you ready to face what's coming? Jake looked up, eyes red but resolute. I'm ready. Mark nodded, the weight of his decision settling on his shoulders. The truth was out, but the road ahead was uncertain, and the consequences would ripple far beyond the locker room walls. Mark sat alone in his dimly lit living room, the weight of the past few weeks pressing down on him like a suffocating fog. The faint hum of the heater was the only sound in the room, broken occasionally by the creak of the old wooden floorboards beneath his restless feet. The bloody jersey folded neatly on the coffee table seemed to burn with a silent accusation, a constant reminder of the truth he'd uncovered, a truth that threatened to unravel everything he held dear. He stared at the worn basketball resting in the corner, Jason's name scrawled in faded marker across the surface. It had been years since Jason had first dribbled that ball, years filled with laughter and dreams, now replaced by silence and aching questions. Mark's chest tightened with a pain deeper than any physical wound. The dual roles he played, father and coach, clashed violently inside him. His mind replayed every conversation, every confession from Ryan and Jake. The boy he'd raised, the team he'd nurtured, were now enmeshed in a web of betrayal and heartbreak. Jason deserved better, Mark whispered to the empty room, his voice breaking. He thought about the boys, those young lives still tethered to hope and fear. They looked to him for guidance, for strength. Yet here he was, torn apart by the weight of justice and mercy. His phone buzzed. A message from Laura. "Are you okay?" It was simple but carried the weight of everything unspoken. Mark's fingers hovered over the screen, hesitating. How could he explain the chaos inside him? The fear of losing not just the truth, but the fragile threads holding his world together? He recalled the moments on the court, Jason's proud smile, Ryan's faltering gaze, Jake's trembling hands. Each boy was more than a player. They were sons, friends, children wrestling with mistakes too big for their age. The thought of exposing them to the full force of the law felt like tearing open a wound that might never heal. But shielding them meant burying the truth, silencing his own son's memory. Mark's mind raced, each choice a dagger twisting in his heart. Could he protect these boys and still honor Jason's life? Or would the pursuit of justice demand sacrifices he wasn't sure he could make? The silence stretched, the room growing colder, mirroring the storm brewing inside. Mark closed his eyes, the battlefield within him raging with doubt, fear, and a desperate hope for redemption. The path forward was unclear, but one thing was certain. Whatever he chose, nothing would ever be the same again. Mark gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white beneath the streetlight's cold glow, as he pulled into the parking lot of the police station. The night air was sharp, biting at his skin, but it did nothing to cool the storm inside him. The bloodied jersey, the silent witness to months of anguish, rested folded carefully in the passenger seat, a dark weight he couldn't set aside. Inside the station, the fluorescent lights hummed with the steady rhythm of a place that had seen countless confessions, tears, and confrontations. Mark's footsteps echoed sharply as he made his way to the interrogation room, where Detective Ramirez awaited him with a stack of files and a measured gaze. Without preamble, Mark laid out everything. The discovery of the jersey, Ryan's confession, Jake's involvement, the web of lies woven around Jason's disappearance. Each word felt like a brick pulled from the foundation of the life he once knew. Detective Ramirez nodded, absorbing every detail. "This changes everything," he said gravely. "We'll need to move quickly." The following days blurred into a whirlwind of police interviews, neighborhood canvassing, and tense meetings. The news spread through Millbrook like wildfire. Conversations in cafes hushed as neighbors glanced toward the courthouse, whispers of betrayal and secrets replacing the usual chatter. Mark found himself thrust into the heart of a reckoning he never imagined. A father forced to confront not only the fate of his son, but the fractures within a community he loved. Then came the night of the confrontation. Mark sat in a cold, sterile room waiting. The sound of heavy boots in the hallway signaled their arrival. Ryan and Jake were led in, faces pale, eyes shadowed by fear and regret. The air was thick with tension as officers read the suspects their rights, the gravity of the moment settling like a heavy fog. Mark watched as the boys were handcuffed, their world shrinking in that instant. The raw reality of justice collided with his heart's fractured pieces. As the officers led them away, Mark's gaze lifted to the window, where the town's silent streets stretched into the night. Relief flickered briefly. A weight lifted, a truth finally acknowledged. But beneath it, a chill of dread settled. this was just the beginning. The threads of Jason's story were far from fully unraveled. And Mark knew, deep down, the reckoning that awaited Millbrook would test every bond, every trust, every hope for healing. The town of Millbrook awoke to a silence unlike any it had known before. The early morning light filtered weakly through gray clouds, casting a muted glow over streets still damp from the night's rain. But it wasn't the weather that weighed on the hearts of the townspeople. It was the heavy burden of truth now laid bare. At the coffee shop, once filled with easy laughter and lively conversations, whispers replaced the usual buzz. Faces once familiar now wore lines of worry, eyes flickering with doubt and suspicion. Families who had celebrated together just weeks ago now passed each other with strained nods or avoided eye contact altogether. Mark sat alone at a corner table, his hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee, the bitter taste matching the storm raging inside. He thought of Jason, the boy who had filled these very streets with boundless energy, whose smile was a beacon for all who knew him. That laughter still echoed faintly in his mind, now twisted with sorrow. The phone calls had started early. Parents of team members, neighbors, friends, they all sought answers, some in anger, others in tears. Trust had fractured like shattered glass, sharp and unforgiving. One afternoon, Mark found himself walking past the park where Jason used to play. The empty basketball hoop stood like a silent sentinel, its net frayed and forgotten. Memories pressed close. The feel of the ball in his hands, Jason's triumphant shout after a perfect shot. He paused, the weight of loss settling deep in his chest. At the school, the hallways whispered of broken friendships. Ryan and Jake were no longer seen in the familiar circles of teammates and classmates. Their absence was a stark reminder of the consequences born from fear and silence. Parents gathered at town meetings, voices rising and falling in heated debates. Some demanded justice, others pleaded for compassion. The community was divided, caught between anger and the desire for healing. Mark wrestled with his own emotions. As a father, his grief was raw and personal. As a coach, he felt responsibility for a team shattered by secrets. Yet amid the chaos, a small flicker of hope remained. One evening, he received a message from Ryan. The words were hesitant, but the intent clear: "I want to make things right." Mark's heart ached at the fragility of that hope. Days turned into weeks. The process of healing began slowly: therapy sessions for the boys, community support groups, quiet moments of reflection. At home, Laura held him tightly one night. "We'll get through this," she whispered, tears tracing paths down her cheeks. Mark nodded, eyes closed against the flood of pain. For Jason, for all of them, the road ahead was long and uncertain. Forgiveness seemed a distant shore, but the journey had begun. And as the town grappled with its wounds, one question lingered, heavy and unresolved. Could Mark and the boys find a way to forgive? Mark's footsteps echoed softly on the worn hardwood as he stepped onto the basketball court. The cool evening air brushed past him, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves and freshly cut grass from the nearby park. The gym was quiet now, empty except for the soft thud of the basketball as it met the floor beneath his steady hand. He dribbled slowly, each bounce stirring a memory. Jason's laughter ringing out during games, the gleam of excitement in his eyes as he made his first basket, the proud grin that had always lit up the room. Mark's heart tightened with both sorrow and a strange sense of peace. The court was the place where their dreams had intertwined, where hope had once seemed endless. As he moved across the court, the rhythm of the ball pulsing through his fingers, Mark felt an almost tangible presence beside him. A warmth that wasn't quite the chill of the evening wind, a whisper of encouragement in the silence. His breath caught, the line between past and present blurring. He paused near the free throw line, gazing upward at the fading sky visible through the high windows. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows that danced across the polished floor. A lifetime of lessons pressed against his mind, about love and loss, about the fragility of youth, and the unyielding strength found in facing truth. Mark's thoughts drifted to the boys still out there, on courts across town, carrying on the game Jason loved. Their lives forever shaped by what had happened, but also by what could still be. The game would go on with all its triumphs and heartbreaks. Suddenly, movement at the edge of the bleachers caught his eye. A figure stood watching quietly, half hidden in the shadows. Familiar yet distant. Mark's breath hitched as his eyes locked onto the silhouette. For a heartbeat, he wondered if it was a ghost, a fragment of his son's spirit lingering to say goodbye. But the figure didn't fade or vanish. Instead, it stepped forward, the outline becoming clearer. A boy, perhaps, or someone carrying the weight of stories yet untold. Mark's heart raced, a mix of hope and uncertainty swirling within him. Jason's story was far from over. It was still being written one moment at a time. As the sun slipped beneath the horizon, Mark lowered the ball and faced the empty court ahead, ready to face whatever came next with the strength born from love and loss. The night had settled over Millbrook, the town wrapped in a quiet stillness that belied the storm it had weathered. Mark stood alone outside the gym, the cool air heavy with the scent of rain and memories. His gaze lingered on the empty court, where shadows stretched long under the glow of the streetlights. His mind traced the path he had traveled, through heartbreak, betrayal, and painful truths. The faces of the boys of his son flashed before him, each one a reminder of what was lost and what might still be salvaged. Mark took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past months settle, not as a burden, but as a part of him. The scars were there, raw and real, but so was the flicker of hope that refused to be extinguished. He knew the road ahead would be difficult. Forgiveness would not come easily, for himself, for the boys, or for the town. But he also knew that without it, healing would remain out of reach. With one last look at the court where it all began, Mark turned and walked into the night. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face whatever lay ahead.